stuck here. The cops won't bother me. Find some hey squids. It's been a while since I've done a Darkside follow-up to my previous video, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more about the Darkside. I've gotten so many comments on my Darkside video, and if you don't know what darksiding is, that's when you put a car tire on your motorcycle. And I'll link the video that I did before up here in the description, but go ahead and look at that first. This is the follow-up. So currently my 06 V-Strom 650 has about 62,000 miles. And on this tire, I have 15,000 miles and it still looks great. It's a BF Goodwrench Comp 2, which is a very sporty compound, and it's very easy to ride. Now, the reason I started using these car tires on bikes is that I accumulated many miles on motorcycle tires, and I was changing them every like 2 months because I was riding so much. And most of my riding has been commuting, and I've done a lot of sport riding. And I often found that people don't really push their bikes that much, but also what I found with car tires is that they turn just as well as any motorcycle tire. I think you only lose maybe a little bit of performance at a very high level, and most of the time when I'm riding, I am not riding at a very high level. I do keep up with sport bikes. I'm faster than a lot of sport bikes and sport bike riders, but that's dependent on skill, of course. I probably would never take a Darkside tire on a track because it's not really the thing for it. If I wanted more performance, I probably would use a motorcycle tire because it is better for performance, but only on the track. I don't see any benefit of using a motorcycle tire anymore on the street. And I really believe that 90% of motorcycle riders would even tell the difference, would not be able to tell the difference, and would benefit more from these Darkside tires. You know, I've gotten a lot of comments saying that it's dangerous. And I wanted to address some of the comments that I've heard on the YouTube channel on the video I made. There's a lot of people that are putting car tires on bikes these days. A lot of it is the customization of motorcycles. A lot of those guys are putting those things in there because it looks kind of cool. It's a very beefy tire. So the short part of the story of why I got into it, I took a cross-country trip on this particular bike to California, Washington State, and in that time I changed the tire 3 times, motorcycle tires. And I met 2 guys that were using Darkside tires. The first was a guy in Oklahoma, or Tennessee, sorry, and he had a Yamaha Majesty with a car tire, and I thought, oh, that's just for going straight in a straight line, it's a scooter. And then eventually I got to Utah and I met Doug, and he had the exact same bike, exact same tire, and he let me ride his bike and I rode it. It seemed okay, you know, I didn't really care too much for it. But after installing 3 tires on a trip, when I got back home, I had to install another rear tire. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just get a car tire and just see what the hell this is about. And I tried it, and my initial thought was like, oh, this is a terrible idea. Don't ever do this. But what ended up being is that I actually liked it more than a motorcycle tire. And it's not so much about the cost, because this is a very expensive tire. I believe it's $140. It's a performance tire. And installing it is probably going to be a little bit more expensive. But for me, I can't really tell the difference now anymore. In the beginning, there is an initial like feeling that you get, but it's not like most people think. Like it's going to somehow, you're going to slide out. It's never like that. It's actually gripped much more than a motorcycle tire has ever gripped. It's also much more comfortable on the highway. It is much more stable in the rain, in every sort of terrain. And I have ridden this thing off-road as well, and it does extremely well. And it's a street tire. You just have so much more contact patch on the road, and it makes a whole lot more sense. But in a muddy condition, I'm not really sure how well this would do off-road. I just don't see myself riding off-road too much on the V-Strom. The V-Strom is not a very great off-road bike, but you can do it, and it'll be just as good as any motorcycle tire. The more important thing is having a round tire in the front. If there's this thing called double dark, which is 2-car tires on the bike. I'm not quite ready for that because I do like going off-road, and I feel that having a motorcycle tire in the front is a little bit better for gravel roads. Downsides, which is actually an upside for me, I think a lot of motorcycle riders just want you to comply with their demands. And you see this a lot with cruiser riders and sport bike riders. They want you to dress a certain way. They even have you behave a certain way. And it's kind of odd, but once I installed this tire, it seems like all of these snowflake motorcycle riders just went away. This kind of is a very polarizing thing for motorcycle riders because they see it as almost blasphemy. But the thing is, it's like most of the people that complain about it are just internet motorcyclists, people that really don't ride very much. And I keep telling people, if you really want to help motorcycling, you shouldn't divert your attention to Darkside riders. You should divert your attention perhaps to people who don't want to ride with a helmet or ride with any gear, ride without boots, ride without gloves, maybe even like battle obesity. But these car tires on bikes, it usually means that the person that's riding a Darkside bike has a lot of experience, enough that they need a car tire to last longer than a motorcycle tire. And all the guys that I've ridden with or known about that have this, they're very good riders. They just ride a whole lot more than you. There's like so many things that you can use your energy to talk about that's more truthful than just worrying about a car tire. And it really is that, like you're worrying about nothing, because nothing, I have about 35,000 miles so far on Darkside tires. And the only reason I got rid of my first Darkside tires because I got a pretty big flat on it. And the cool thing is that I was able to ride it home with the flat. Normally on a motorcycle tire, I could not ride it home. But I did on this because it's so beefy. There's just so much thread on it. Even with a flat tire, it feels like you still have air in it. It's incredible. I have not seen any negatives to the Darkside experience yet. It's all been upsides. Longer lasting, it grips just as well, it's much more stable. And I don't really care if you get a Darkside tire. I'm not trying to convince you, but it's just kind of silly to waste your time making fun of somebody that's got this. It only means that I ride a lot. I wanted to go over some of the things people have said in my previous Darkside videos. I did one that's kind of weirdly got a lot of views, and I think it's so polarizing that people are just very curious about the experience, and I think a lot of people are interested in trying it. So here's some comments. To each his own, but it's not for me. I'll stick with motorcycle tires. That's fine. Nobody's trying to convince you. What's his name? John Reed. No one's trying to convince you. I think for me, I like to put it out there because if I was a beginning rider, I just regret not getting into this earlier because it would have saved me thousands of dollars and tons of time waiting for shops to put on your tires and getting like grease on your hands from changing the tires. This is a great thing for 90% of motorcycle riders. So here's a comment that's interesting. I don't use car tires on my bike, but I know someone who does, and he could outride me on the twisties on his Goldwing with enough safety margin too. And that's true. Like a good rider will outride you no matter what. And if you're a crappy rider and you need somehow to tell your mates that you have a Pirelli Diablos or whatever, go for it. But I'm not trying to impress people by having a car tire. In a way, it kind of reflects badly on me, like people do judge you. But we live in a very like snowflake society that likes to judge, so I don't really care for those people. Thinking of adding air conditioning and keyless entry on my motorcycle. I mean, why not? That's kind of funny. At least he's got a sense of humor. I make fun of the life, what do you call them? the bike boys that ride on the highway all the time doing wheelies. But in reality, I don't really care, but I think it's just silly because I don't think they're developing a lot of skills. They're just doing wheelies, and everybody that's ridden a bike has done wheelies, including me. Here's another comment, quote unquote, "It is really not that bad," quoting me. And then he says, "Wow, sounds awesome." You know, maybe my way of putting it is a little bit different because I don't like the bullshit, but it is a little bit different. You get used to it, but you get used to it when I go from one motorcycle tire to another. There is the initial learning curve of it because they behave different. And with this, it's no different. Here's another comment from John Warner. "Great video, thanks. I don't understand all the haters. It's not like anyone's trying to force them to do it. I'm tempted to do it now just to piss people off." And that's one of the things that I really like about even like putting up videos, is to piss off some of the snowflakes out there that ride bikes. I don't really care. Don't put a car tire on your bike. It doesn't matter. Now, this is something that a lot of snowflakes write on my videos with the Darkside stuff. Maybe put motorcycle tires on your car. I mean, it is just silly. You know, I guess, could I? Maybe I'll try it. Here's a comment on the video. "What tire pressure do you run and how do you know it's correct?" A lot of it goes by feeling, but I find that 35 PSI works really well. And you can go all the way up to 40, but I find 35 a little bit softer, is a little bit better for cornering. Some people prefer more. Sometimes too, I go on the interstates and I will put a little bit more air, and then I just kind of let the air out midway. But I usually don't really do that too much. It's only if I go cross country. But oftentimes 35 PSI works really well. Does the Darkside tire do off-road? And one of the things I've done on this tire, I did cross country. I did hundreds of miles off-road, including the Trans-America Trail on this particular tire. And I think I put 7,000 miles on this trip, like in a month. And it did pretty well. So on gravel, on dirt, it does really well. I didn't try it when it was wet. But a lot has more to do with the front tire, the handling, than the rear. The flatness profile of the Darkside tire helps for traction. There was not any like deep sand that I couldn't plow through. And I did go in some pretty deep sand. I just, you know, this particular bike has got a lot of torque, or like the torque is very well laid out. And I was able to like pull out of sand very easy. On gravel, it was very easy. The only issue you would find is that if you're riding in a trail that's got like dirt bike trails where it's very rutted, it's a little bit hard because the Darkside tire tends to go straight. And if there's like an angle to the trail, it wants to kind of stand upright. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. But oftentimes I don't find myself going on single tracks, but when I do find that it kind of wants to stay flat in proportion to the terrain, if that makes any sense. But most people would never ever notice any difference riding off-road, like in a gravel road. This is absolutely fine. It's such a good compound, and it doesn't wear out very much, that you could ride it forever on gravel. It makes a lot of sense. And I did hundreds and hundreds of miles on this particular tire. Have you checked with your insurance company? And yes, I did check with my insurance company, State Farm, and all they care is it's DOT certified, and this thing is DOT. Now, some other comments that I've read were about if you get into an accident, good luck your insurance company taking care of that. Since it's a DOT tire and you're in the United States, they have to honor the insurance, because otherwise you would have a pretty good legal battle. I mean, you could win against the insurance company pretty easily because it's a DOT certified tire. I do have a bike in Europe, and in Europe they're much more stringent. I have an Africa Twin in Europe, and if you go back and you change the tire from one manufacturer to the other, I believe I have some Bridgestone on my Africa Twin. It was a pain in the ass to get some Avon Distanzia tire fitted, because in the manual, they actually check the manual and they want to get the exact same size that's in the manual. So you cannot go wider, you cannot go shorter. I mean, that's like a pathetic way of living, in my opinion. But honestly, after you install it, you just ride out and you can put any other tire. But in Europe, they're much more strict. So if you do get pulled over, they could give you a ticket. And by the way, I've gotten pulled over and cops don't say anything. They're curious about it. A lot of people are curious about it. And also keep in mind that there are motorcycles running around directly from the factory with car tires. The Polaris Slingshot, for example, has car tires. So the insurance companies can't make that distinction. They do not check the tires because that is a car tire on a motorcycle. So, and there's also trikes, so you cannot make that distinction. So if somehow your insurance company did not want to cover it and you're in the United States, you could win against them. There's like, I guarantee there is no issue at all. So here's another comment. I'm a Darkside big believer for years. I'm curious, what brand and make of car tire do you have in your bike? It looks perfect. Thank you. From Roger Eastman. This is a BF Goodwrench Comp 2. They also have a Comp 2 DS or AS all season. And both of them work really well. It's a very soft compound, so it's the sort of tire that you would put in a sports car. The downside is that it wears out faster than a harder compound car tire. But for this sort of bike, and I do ride it kind of aggressively, especially in the summer, so I find that it kind of helps me a little bit. But I'm at 15,000 miles on this current one, and I have quite a bit more thread to go through. Comment, Utah Rider, something nobody ever talks about discussing the subject of liability that insurance companies may hold against you if you make this modification. Like my previous comment, that's a completely false statement because a lot of motorcycles do come with car tires. And since in the United States, all that is required is the DOT approval, Can-Am's, Polaris, they already come with car tires directly from the factory, so you can't make that distinction. Comment. What about the front tire? Bad idea to try and use a car tire for it as well? You know, for me, I don't think I'm going to try the front car tire, but that is a term that is used. It's called double dark, and that's a car tire in the back, car tire in the front. But I like having the front motorcycle tire because usually it doesn't wear out very often. And I like going off-road in gravel. And the front tire is very important for gravel, for steering in gravel. And on the motorcycle, the front to me is much more important than the rear. The rear just goes with whatever I want. It's the same sort of thing if you ride off-road. You know, you just kind of plow through. Like the front, that's why you have like a large front tire so you can kind of go over things. But the front tire is much more important. The rear, you just need thread. And as long as you give it gas, it's going to go through. Same thing as I treat the rear. It's just the rear carries a lot of weight, but I'm steering with my front. Why do it? I own a bike shop and have owned it for 11 years. Our first year in business, I had a customer con us into installing a car tire on the rear of his cruiser. He debeaded it 50 miles into it. He came back to us after we had signed a no liability on the shop form. Never again, it's unsafe, ridiculous, and plain unsafe. The sidewalls are not designed for it. Don't do it. I get a lot of comments from these guys pretending that they have done it. It's possible that it came off, but what is more important is that this guy owns a bike shop, and I think he improperly installed it. It could potentially do it, but no more so than a motorcycle tire coming off the bead of a rim. It's very odd because this thing is actually like much firmer on the rim than a motorcycle tire. So in a way, I kind of feel that this guy is bullshitting me because a lot of it is kind of like, he mentioned that the customer conned us into putting it. How does the conning work? It's either you're a fool or you're not. I mean, do customers regularly con you into doing things? I mean, you did it. You can just say no. I would rather have bike shops say, hey, I can't install it. I don't feel right about it. That's fine. That's a little bit better than telling me that your customer conned you into installing a car tire. To me, this kind of reads more like bullshit. There's another comment, Ari Leonard. Highly illegal and dangerous. Don't do it. Well, Ari, no, it's not illegal and it's not dangerous. You might have a less tolerance for danger, but for me, I'm able to handle it. You might be a snowflake. Hey guys, that is what the Darkside is all about. I'll probably put together a couple more videos in the future talking about it, but I got 62,000 miles on this bike. I've ridden about 400,000 miles in every sort of condition. I'm not exactly a noob. I've had 30 bikes, and yeah, like, this works for me. It might not work for you. No one's trying to convince you, but at least be a little bit more informed. Kind of stuck here. The cops won't bother me. Fine, so